Hello, beautiful people of the internet. How are you doing today? My name is Jackie and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I am going to be doing the Reluctant TBR tag. This tag was created by Chloe Frizzle and she tagged me in it. Thank you so much to her. I will link her original video down below if you want to go check that out. This tag is all about books that are on your TBR, but you are reluctant to read for various reasons. That could be because you've been hearing negative reviews for it, or the book physically has not come out yet and you're unable to read it at this time. There are 15 questions, I believe, so let's get right to it. The first question is a book you want to read, but you soft DNF'd it once already. And for me, that's A Dance with Dragons by George R.R. Martin. I DNF'd this, I don't remember where exactly, but when I tried to read it, it was not that long after the Game of Thrones TV show ended, and I, like many people, really disliked the ending of Game of Thrones. So I think it was hard for me to read this book when I kind of had that feeling of, well, what's the point? Because the ending was so bad anyway. It also doesn't help that we have no idea when the next book in the series, The Winds of Winter, is going to come out, if it's ever going to come out. So part of me still wants to read this someday, but I had a hard time getting through it given the circumstances. The next question is a book on your TBR where you read another book by that same author and didn't enjoy it. So for this question, I'm going to say The Magnolia Palace by Fiona Davis. This is on my TBR, but I read another Fiona Davis book and really, I didn't really care for it. I read The Lions of Fifth Avenue for a themed reading vlog where the library chose my books. And I just really disliked the main character in this. I found her to be a very selfish person, and I think Fiona Davis wanted me to root for her, but I did not. I did not like her at all. And because of that, I am a little more reluctant to pick up The Magnolia Palace. Even though this book sounds interesting, I am a little bit scared considering I disliked the protagonist in The Lions of Fifth Avenue so much. Honestly, one of my least favorite main characters I've read about in quite some time. I don't know if I can go as far as to say ever, but she was a character who I really strongly disliked, and I don't think that was the author's intention. It's totally okay to have unlikable main characters in books. I just personally want to feel like if the character is really unlikable, I want to feel like that was the author's goal. If the author wants me to like someone and I hate them, that to me is not a good thing. It's all about the author's intention. Question number 3, a book that is brand new and you're just not sure when you're going to get around to it. I have probably several books that I could give as an answer to this one because I read a lot of books from the library, and obviously new books that just came out have much longer wait lists because they're new and they're hyped and a lot of people want to get their hands on the book. But I'm going to answer The Examiner by Janice Hallett. I enjoy Janice Hallett's books. She writes a lot of really creative mysteries, typically with mixed media elements, and this is her latest book that just came out at the end of August, I believe. I'm not entirely sure though when I'm actually gonna get around to reading it. I only just read The Twyford Code by Janice Hallett this year, and I think that came out in maybe 2022 or something like that. So while I do really enjoy this author, it might take me a year or two to actually get around to reading her latest release. The next question is a book that you want to read, but the cover is painfully ugly. And for this, I definitely have to say Towards Zero by Agatha Christie. I love Agatha Christie and I want to read all of her mysteries. However, I hate this cover. I ordered this from Thrift Books, and the edition that they sent me looks absolutely nothing like the photo that I saw online when I was ordering. I wanted the same edition as all my other Christies, and I got this instead, which I'm pretty sure is a cover from the 1970s. I think it's just really, really ugly. I've learned my lesson not to order classics from Thrift Books. I loved Thrift Books, but when you're ordering a classic and they come in multiple editions, you can't be sure what you're actually gonna get in the mail. I do want to read this, but man, is it ugly. The next question is a classic book that might be good for you, but you're not that interested. I'm gonna say Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. My dad has been telling me that I really ought to read this book. He mentions it to me repeatedly, tells me, oh, it's a quick read, it's short, you should read it. But to be honest, it just doesn't sound interesting to me like at all. So this is not technically on my TBR because, like I said, it doesn't sound interesting to me. But you know, I do recognize maybe it could be good for me. Maybe it wouldn't take that much time. But do I feel the motivation to pick it up and read it? No. No, I do not. I'm sorry, Dad. The next question is, name a book that you want to read, but it's humongous and intimidating. Okay, there are, again, several books that I could give as an answer to this question. I am proud of myself because this year I finally read The Count of Monte Cristo, which was the longest book on my TBR and a book that had been on my TBR since 2018. So I am very proud of myself that I finally read that book and thoroughly enjoyed it, but there are still a lot of 1,000-page books that do sound interesting to me, but it's really scary to think about picking up a 1,000-page book. For this question, I'm going to say The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. This also has been on my TBR since 2018. It's a historical fiction book set during the anarchy in England. And I think the premise surrounds building a cathedral, but there's also a lot of personal and political drama on top of that. You're following a very large cast of characters, and it's the first in a series. So that makes it even scarier because not only is this book 900 plus pages, but there are sequels that come after it. I added this to my TBR way back in 2018 because it is a very famous book. I believe it was adapted into a British miniseries starring Eddie Redmayne and Haley Atwell, among other famous people. So it is something that a lot of people have enjoyed. Ken Follett is a very successful author of historical fiction, but this scares me, and that's why I haven't read it all these years later. The next question is a book that you feel like you need to read because it's so hyped, but you're not that excited about it. Again, looking back at my TBR shelf, at books that I added when I first joined BookTube back in 2018. One of the books I added was The Fifth Season by N.K. Gemson, because at the time I saw so many 5-star reviews for this book, people talking about how N.K. Gemson is brilliant, one of their favorite authors. And I added it really intending to read it, but honestly, when I think about reading this book now, am I excited? No, I am not. I don't read a lot of fantasy in general. Like, I do like fantasy, but it's not something that I pick up frequently. And I don't feel that excited to read this book. Maybe part of the reason why I don't feel that excited is because I don't actually know that much about the plot. So it is a little hard to get excited for something when you're not entirely sure what it's actually about, but this is a book that's been on my TBR for quite some time, and I know that it's very highly regarded and a lot of people think it's great, but am I gonna pick it up anytime soon? I don't know. I mean, maybe I should just delete it from the TBR and accept that it's not gonna happen for me. The next question is a book that you want to read, but you need to be in a specific mood to enjoy it. Honestly, I I think most of the nonfiction books on my TBR fit into this category because I do enjoy reading nonfiction, particularly nonfiction about history, but I have to be in the right mood to pick up one of those books because one, I definitely cannot read a nonfiction book as quickly as I read a fiction book, and it's just a really different reading experience because I personally am not going to read 150 pages of a historical nonfiction book before bed like I would do with a novel. So I have a lot of really interesting sounding historical nonfiction books on my TBR that do sound interesting, and I would really like to learn more about those people or those time periods, but I gotta be in the right headspace to pick up that sort of thing. Next is a book that you want to read, but you're on the fence about continuing the series. For this, I'm going to say Peril at the Exposition by Neeve March. This is the second in her series of the Captain Jim and Lady Diana historical mysteries. Now, I did add this book to my TBR because I was open to continuing the series, but now I'm not quite sure. The first book in the series was quite long, and I did enjoy parts of it, but I felt like there was a period in the middle where I was quite bored. I felt like maybe the book could have been shorter. And also, I thought that my library had Peril at the Exposition because the first book in the series, Murder in Old Bombay, I got that from the library, so I assumed they would have the sequel as well. They actually do not. And yes, I could request that they order the book, but I just don't know if I'm like that motivated. I might just, call it quits and not read this one, but I'm honestly on the fence. We'll see if I end up picking it up or not. The next question is a book that you want to read, but it's been on your TBR for a very long time. I have so many books that have been on my TBR since I joined booktube. I actually made an entire 2024 Read It or Delete It TBR challenge because of that. I will link that in the card, so go watch that if you're interested. Obviously, I just need to pick one for this question, and I think I'm gonna go with The Diviners by Libba Bray. This has been on my TBR since 2018 because it was very popular and very hyped when I first joined booktube, but I don't know if I'm actually gonna read it at this point. It sounds interesting. It's set in the 1920s, I believe, and I think it does involve some element of mystery, a mystery subplot. But I don't really read young adult fiction anymore. I did back then, but it's not something I gravitate towards now. I'm pretty much a wholly adult reader at this point. So I don't know if I'm actually gonna read this, but also at the same time, people in my comments have told me that it's really good and they think that I'll like it. I don't know, we'll see, but 6 years is a long time to have a book on your TBR. So it may not happen. I don't know. Now, a book that you want to read, but it's in a genre outside your comfort zone. So I had a hard time finding something for this one, but what I ultimately settled on was The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown. This is like a self-help book, which I never read. I don't know if I've ever read a self-help book in my entire life, to be honest with you. I can't think of one. But the reason I added this to my TBR is because my therapist recommended this book to me and basically said that she thought this book would really be helpful for me, telling on myself a little bit there. So it could be a really beneficial reading experience, but it's not at all the type of thing that I would read normally. Next is a book that, despite owning it, you'll probably never read it. And for this, I'm gonna say Wicked Like a Wildfire by Lana Popovic. I honestly don't even remember when I bought this. This is a young adult fantasy, the first in a duology, and it's about two sisters set in Montenegro. I bought this basically because the cover is so beautiful. I mean, I still think it is gorgeous. It's absolutely one of, if not the most beautiful covers that I have. I just love the colors and the flowers. I think it's gorgeous. But am I gonna read it? No, probably not. I don't really read young adult anymore. I don't remember the last time I read a young adult book. And like I said, do I like fantasy? Yes. Is it something that I frequently feel inspired to pick up? No, it's not. So this is probably gonna be on hold at some point. I think realistically, as beautiful as it is, am I ever gonna read this? No, I'm not. I think I'm gonna skip question 13 because this is a question about a book that you added to your TBR solely because of a book club or a friend's recommendation. And honestly, I couldn't think of anything for this because I'm not currently in any book clubs at the moment. And I mean, to be honest with you, if a friend recommends a book to me and it doesn't sound interesting to me, I'm just not gonna read it, you know? I'll smile politely and thank them for the recommendation, but I'm not gonna force myself to read something I have no interest in just because a friend said it was good. So yeah, I don't really have an answer for that one. Question 14 is a book that you want to read, but negative reviews have made you less excited for it. For this, I'm gonna say The Widow Spy by Megan Campisi. This book sounds really interesting to me because it's a historical fiction novel about Kate Warne, who was a female detective with the Pinkertons in the 1800s. And she has a really interesting sounding life story. Actually, the Pinkertons ended up establishing an all-female wing of their detective agency because of Kate Warne and her influence. So it sounds really intriguing to me, but the Goodreads rating is not really that high, so that does give me a bit of pause. I still think it sounds really good, so maybe I will read it, but the less than great Goodreads rating does dampen my excitement a little bit. And the final question is a book that you want to read, but it hasn't come out yet. Of course, I'm gonna say Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. I loved The Hunger Games when I was in middle school, and I still remember them fondly. I quite enjoyed The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I know that's a bit of a hot take. I feel like when The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes first came out, I was seeing so many negative reviews for it, and now that the movie adaptation came out, I feel like public opinion has kind of shifted, and now I see a lot more positive reviews for The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. But personally, I enjoyed it from the beginning, and I trust Suzanne Collins with my life. I really trust her, and I think honestly, The Hunger Games, when I think back on them now as an older person, like, I just have such fond memories, and I think there was definitely a lot of political commentary in them that at the time I didn't even pick up on because of how young I was, but now I can look back on that and really appreciate what Suzanne Collins was doing. She also created Peeta Mellark, who is my precious angel baby, one of my favorite characters of all time. Like, name a better man than him, you cannot. So I totally trust Suzanne Collins, and I am so excited to see this new Hunger Games book when it comes out. So that is it for the Reluctant TBR tag. And before I go, I need to tag some people to do this. I always get like so nervous when I have to tag people in a video. And honestly, a lot of times I just skip tagging people because I don't know who to tag. I'm worried that people who I tag aren't gonna wanna do it. But I'm just gonna tag some people, and listen, like, if you don't wanna do this, you don't have to. Also, if you're someone out there watching, even if I don't explicitly tag you, do this if it sounds interesting to you. Feel free to say in your video that I tagged you, and let me know that you posted your own video in the comment section so I can go check it out. So here are the people that I'm going to tag and why. Again, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. Feel free to ignore. This is totally optional. But I'm going to tag Reading with Manny because she has tagged me in tag videos in the past, so I am returning the favor. I'm also going to tag one of my subscribers, Read and Knit with Cheryl, because Cheryl has mentioned me in a few videos, and again, I want to return the favor. Cheryl, feel free to do this if it sounds interesting to you. I am also going to tag Gina Stanier Books and Kelly from Books I'm Not Reading because they post a lot of lovely tag videos, and I think this is something they might enjoy doing. Again, if you don't want to, feel free to disregard. This is just totally optional because I thought you might be interested and I would like to see your answers. But that is it for this video today, everyone. I hope you enjoyed. If you did like this video, please do give it a big thumbs up. It really does help me and my channel. Please subscribe to my channel if you want to see more from me. I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. You can find my social media links in the description if you want to follow me on Tumblr, Instagram, or be my friend on Goodreads. I think that about covers it. Thank you so much for watching this video today, and I hope you have a terrific rest of your day. Bye, and I'll see you next time.